Welcome to Why I Left, a podcast that explores the Great Resignation. I'm your host, Brian Akar. Join me as I chronicle real stories from real people about the reasons they decided to leave their jobs during the pandemic and what has happened since. Hello, and thanks again for tuning into this episode of the Why I Left podcast. In today's episode, I chat with Kimberly Mayes. Kimberly is a licensed psychotherapist, speaker, author, wellness expert, and fellow Florida Gator. Go Gators. She owns and operates the Essence Therapy and Wellness Center, which focuses on recreating the definition of therapy and self-care for the BIPOC community. Now, she's experienced and learned a lot throughout the pandemic, from navigating personal tragedy to better aligning her work with her values. I appreciated her vulnerability during our discussion and think you'll enjoy our chat. So let's go check it out. All right, welcome back. So our guest today is Kimberly Mayes. Kimberly is a licensed psychotherapist and founder of Essence Therapy and Wellness Center, where she supports clients from the perspective of strength and empowerment. After getting her bachelor's of sociology from the University of Florida, she obtained a master's of social work from Clark Atlanta University and is currently a doctor of social work candidate at Simmons University. I'm excited to have her on the show to share her experience personally and professionally throughout the pandemic and why she ultimately joined the Great Resignation. So hi, Kimberly. Welcome to the show.
Hi. Thank you so much.
So, this is a show where we're going to talk about the Great Resignation, right? And it's interesting, and we'll get to that a little bit later on. But prior to that, how about you tell us a little bit about your upbringing and where you currently call home?
All right. So upbringing, I am originally from Los Angeles, California. Grew up there until I was about 11 or 12. Then moved to Miami, Florida, where I was until I actually graduated high school and then attended University of Florida. Currently, I call the world my home. I actually decided to sell my home in Atlanta, Georgia. I moved there after the University of Florida, and I am looking to live internationally. And so I have a location in mind. I'll share that probably at the end of the year. But yes, the world is my oyster right now.
I love to hear that, and a little bit of jealousy here, but I love to hear that. So, what's been your passion in some of the work that you do?
Honestly, it's really supporting individuals, my clients to come to the best version of themselves, right? And so as a therapist, you work with a lot of clients who are dealing with so many things throughout the day, so many past experiences that they may not have necessarily addressed. And so when it comes to just supporting my clients get to the best version of themselves, that is the reason why I am passionate about what I do. And it's so interesting that pretty much aligns with this podcast.
Absolutely. I talked a little bit about how you started your own practice, and I'll ask a bit more about that later on. But, prior to starting your own venture, describe your experience in the workforce and some of the things that have worked well in the environments you've been a part of.
Sure. So the workforce, the fun part of this conversation. So when it comes to just my background as a social worker, I am a master level social worker, and I've worked for the state government agencies. I've worked in hospital settings. I've worked for, education districts. I've worked for nonprofits. I've pretty much done it all when it comes to social work. And so when it comes to my background, some of the things that I've noticed across the board with, working with individuals who need support. I like to say it that way because oftentimes social work is pinned as a profession where you don't make money, where you are really helping people who are down and out. And that's really not what the profession is about. But really being able to take a lot of the skills that I've learned, which is resiliency, right? I've worked in a lot of different roles, and one of the things that I've learned is resiliency. The other thing that I learned in a lot of my roles is being passionate, but also understanding that sometimes that passion does not align with organizations that you work for. And so there are some times where you have to make a decision. Is your passion and is what you stand for as far as morals, ethics, and values, if it does not align with an organization, are you okay with moving forward? Right. And so those are some of the things that I took away that actually got me to where I am today. because my passion is to support individuals in a holistic way, in a way that I can do so without the red tape, so to speak, and really create impact in the lives of my clients versus considering budgets, versus considering, all of the red tape that sometimes organizations can have in the way of actually getting to the real support that individuals need.
Yeah, no, agreed. And I would love to expand on that shortly too, because I think a lot of people have kind of come to that point during this time, or at least over the past couple of years, as to values and passions not necessarily aligning with what an organization is doing, right? So now take us back to March of 2020, right? So at that time, we didn't know what it was going to be, right? Everyone thought it was going to be a couple of weeks, right? But COVID happens in March of 2020. Describe how the pandemic affected you.
Man, so at the time, I was actually traveling for work. Every 3 months, I was traveling to a new hospital. I was a hospital social worker and working in emergency departments, psychiatric units, and really, on assignment. When the pandemic happened, I had literally just finished an assignment in Los Angeles at a clinic, and I had about a month where I literally sat down. Right. And so it was kind of like a perfect timing because everything had just shut down and I was transitioning into a new assignment. But what that taught me was that, man, we have so much that we need to be progressive with as a nation that we weren't prepared for this at all. As I began my assignment late March, we were slammed in the hospital setting. We were slammed, and there were so many people who were, of course, passing away. So many individuals who did not have healthcare insurance, so many individuals who did not have family members to support them. And it was overwhelming emotionally. Seeing some of my colleagues pass away, taking into consideration that, of course, as a social worker, you have that mental health support background. And so we were leaned on big time, right? And I don't think that we really realize when you are in a healthcare profession, you go into go mode. You really don't realize how burdened you are until you have a time to rest. And so that was about the summer of 2020 when a lot of myself included and some of my colleagues, we began to actually feel the heaviness and the burden of what actually took place months prior. So it was overwhelming, right? But of course, as a mental health professional, you want to show up and you want to be a support best that you can. But our workload definitely was big, of course, being that I was working in a hospital setting.
Yeah. And now and my condolences from, I'm also in healthcare currently, to those team members that you may have lost during that time. Did you all find yourselves not only supporting the families of patients, but also colleagues as well? Did they call on you to do those types of services?
Absolutely. And it was from a humanistic perspective, right? It wasn't from a professional perspective. If I see my colleagues hurting, we just jump in. And I think that just during that time, a lot of individuals within the hospital setting, employees, we all just leaned on each other, literally. How you doing today? And it's just like, I'm here, and, organizations are actually very supportive. Food always helps, right?
Right.
And so there were a lot of organizations who were just sending droves of food to the hospital every single day, from breakfast to lunch to dinner to just actually having a moment to sit outside and just take a breather. And so we were all supporting each other the best that we could and taking, breaks where we could as well. So it was a necessary work for us, but we definitely leaned on each other very heavily during that time.
Got it. And so what did you start to learn throughout this process?
I'll relate that to myself, that although I am made for this work, that red tape doesn't work for me. There was a lot of red tape in reference to supporting patients who needed support beyond the four walls of the hospital, and we weren't able to do so for whatever reason, right? Whether it's funding, whether it's the individual not having health care, whatever it is. It was just a gamut of things. Beds being full at shelters, COVID shelters, because they can't go home. Just a lot of different things. And I recognize that this work is necessary, but I want to be able to make an impact in a way that is truly impactful and not in a Band-Aid format. And so I recognized that this type of burnout, I don't want to feel again. I just don't. And it's not something that I'm going to sign up for long term.
Got it. And so that's actually a good transition into now. So you're feeling this way. The summer of 2020, it sounds like things are really people are really reflecting on what's been happening. So now ultimately, how did the pandemic start to affect the relationship with your job?
It forced me to say, Kim, what are you doing? And in a way of that was personal to me, right? We can talk about what doesn't work from an organization perspective, but let's talk about what you want to do, Kim. Let's talk about what you want your life to look like, right? And so it forced me to really have a tough conversation with myself. I was licensed at a master level for the longest, and I was so afraid to take my clinical exam, so afraid. Any practitioner who is a mental health professional, there's some level of fear of taking that exam. There just is. And so, again, licensed at the master level for a long time, but just very fearful of, sitting for that clinical exam. I had my supervision hours. I had everything already panned out, but I just needed to take the exam. And at that point, all of the frustrations were building up for me around the red tape, around some of the leadership that was in the building, around some of the things that I just did not morally and ethically agree with. And it forced me to look at myself and say, Kim, if you're not happy with the situation, if you're not happy with the setup, what are you going to do about bettering your future to make it look like exactly what you've always dreamed of, which is owning your own private practice? And so those frustrations forced me to actually take the leap and take my exam.
Got it. And just my own education. So what is the kind of the hump about what is the thing about the clinical exam? Is it just like really hard? Is the pass rate very low?
Yeah, so the exam itself, it is hard. It is difficult, right? It's an exam that policy versus practice type of thing. There is a big difference. And so this clinical exam, it tests your knowledge of whether or not you're ready to support someone and diagnose someone from a mental health perspective, right? So we're talking about application. We're not talking about recall on an exam. We're talking about application. And learning how to take an exam based on how a board wants you to take the exam is very difficult from what you learn practically in the field. And so that is that's a lot of trouble that a lot of my colleagues have gone through, as well as, others in other professions who, we're all therapists, but we have different boards that we have to respond to. Majority of the time, that's the trouble. And so this exam has been taken by individuals. I know individuals who've taken the clinical exam 7 times, or individuals who have taken it 4 times. Thankfully, I was able to pass it on the first go, but I know individuals who are dynamic practitioners. But when it comes to this exam, it's just very difficult.
Wow. Thank you for that. Mm-hmm. And kudos to you. One and done, right?
Thank you. One and done.
Nice. One and done. Yeah, yes. I bet. So now you talked a little bit about, you're in this like traveler role, right? So you'd been working as this travel social worker for appears to be like around 3 years. And then now you then transitioned into this full-time hospital setting, which looks about around 6 months. Now, ultimately, you then say, hey, enough is enough. And keep me honest here, like around November in 2021, right? So ultimately, why did you leave your job during the pandemic?
I was ready to live the life that I wanted to create. That's really what it boils down to. And I always talk about, it's so interesting that we have these revelations with ourselves, but I talk about this with my clients all the time, right? It's like, do as I say, not as do as I say, kind of thing. But oftentimes when it comes to professional frustration, it can be correlated with personal frustration, right? We can define professional frustrations, but sometimes we can't define personal frustration, right? We can succeed at work, but we sometimes can't succeed at the inner work that we need to do. And it's parallel oftentimes. And so for me, those frustrations were coming because personally, I didn't want to do what I was doing professionally, So it was causing a lot of personal frustration. And so, I decided to, this isn't working for me anymore. I've done this, for a number of years. I've traveled for a number of years. I decided to take a leadership role. and, start a full-time job. But I just said, you know what, it's just not working. I want to have my own private practice. I want to be my own practitioner. I want to have autonomy around how I support my clients. And I want that time back, right? Time for me is very important so that way I can live in my personal life. And so that is what made me say the frustrations, Kim, are here because this isn't what you really want to do.
Right. It's almost like sounds like you gotta stop fighting yourself is what
Yes.
I'm hearing a little bit. Yeah.
Yes.
So now when you make this decision in November 21, how did that impact you, and what was some of the feedback you got from, let's say, the place that you worked at the time?
Oh, let's not talk about that.
Okay.
I'm joking. I mean, we can talk about them, but in all honesty, that was actually, had I not joined that organization, I would not have taken my value and been where I am right now, because that organization definitely did not appreciate the skill set that not only I brought to the department, but my colleagues. There was a lot of toxicity within that department. And so being a very person-centered person and focused on how people feel and making sure that people are seen, especially in a leadership role, I enjoyed, that type of work and making sure that my colleagues and those who I am leading are supported and loved on. And not having that and it being intentional toxicity, I was like, you can't do this anymore, Kim. This does not align with you personally nor professionally. And it helped that I am a doctoral student, and one of my courses that I was taking during that time was based on leadership. And just knowing that my personal morals and values are not aligning with the organization that I was with, it's okay to move forward. Taking that course and really having some of my ideologies solidified during that course made me say, okay, this is it. And that's what helped me kind of move forward and have the courage to be where I am now.
No, that's great. And so what has happened since you left?
Oh, what hasn't happened? It's been so good. I am so happy. Like, really, I am. Yes. So since I've left, I've taken my exam. I've passed my exam. I was already seeing clients prior to becoming a clinical clinician, but now I have my own private practice. I've been doing amazing financially, budget-wise, all of that good stuff. I'll share a little bit about this because I'm happy about it. When it comes to just my income, of course, I have doubled my income in 1 week versus what I would normally make every 2 weeks. I make that now, and I only work 2 to 3 days a week. And so that is very rewarding because the other 4 to 5 days a week, I am enjoying myself, living my life, traveling, enjoying my family. I'm doing what I've always dreamed of, which is just literally traveling and having fun and enjoying my life and having a great self-care routine, which is just taking care of me, doing the things that I enjoy every day.
That's awesome. And so now, what have you learned about yourself throughout this process?
So I'll relate it to some of the things that I learned or left in corporate, which is I am very resilient, right? I do have the skill set to problem solve very easily. When it comes to my heart for people, I definitely have a heart for people in a way that is supportive and progressive to their development of being who they want to be wholeheartedly. And so another thing that I learned about myself is that it's okay to just be me, right? Society really teaches us how to be like each other. It's a way that's worked for a very long time, let me say that, right? But I've just gotten to the point where I'm okay with being myself and not having a conventional life as everyone else, right? And so I do have colleagues who have a private practice who, have a building. I don't. My practice is 100% virtual, and wherever I am, that's where I work. I have dynamic clients who love the adventures that I share. So it's okay to be myself. That is what I have learned in this process. This pandemic has definitely given me the permission to say, I'm okay with being who I am.
That's great to hear. And, the hybrid nature of, mental health services, right? Being, it's no longer brick and mortar. I mean, yes, you still have those, but the flexibility that being 100% virtual offers to, potential clients, that's got to be amazing for them, right? Because people need
Yes,
that.
yes.
Definitely.
I have clients who, aren't just in one state. Some of them are international as well. So I
Yeah.
have some coaching clients who are in Egypt. I have some coaching clients who are in Colombia. So yeah, it's great.
No, that's awesome. So that's a perfect segue into this. So tell us a little bit more about Essence Therapy and Wellness Center.
Absolutely. And so Essence Therapy and Wellness Center, it is a private practice, mental health practice where I support the majority of my clients are Black women. However, I do have Black men and who, need support with life. The one thing that I always like to say is that at the end of the day, we all need support. We all need guidance. Sometimes we didn't get that growing up. And so it's okay to have that now. And so I really support my clients with, a lot of life transitions, career transitions, a lot of, trauma, racial trauma as well. I do have clients who experience grief as well as relationship issues. And so these are the two types of issues, along with some other things that I support my clients with. And yes, my focus is to empower and to allow my clients to be able to feel like the best version of themselves every day.
That's great. That's great. And now I would imagine that over these past few years, the focus on mental health has gotten much more of a focus. I mean, and we're actually at the time of this interview, we're actually wrapping up Mental Health Awareness Month, right?
Yeah.
And so what are some of the themes that you have noticed in your practice since the pandemic started?
Everyone's just tired. Everyone is tired of not being the best version of themselves. Everyone is tired of society dictating how we should live our individual lives. And I am also noting some similarities in why this podcast exists. My clients really want to get to who they are as well as live that life completely. And if that means career change, if that means, changes in relationships, if that means changes in geographical location, if that means, changes however they need to make those changes to live the best life that they desire to live, that is the common theme with this pandemic. There's no time to be wasted. And that is something that is a priority, and I celebrate it.
Yeah, no, that's great. And so now one of the things that I'd like to get across in the show, all my guests, it's important for those who are listening to hear from those who kind of have lived this, right? So what advice would you give to our listeners who may have a similar experience to yours, but really don't know what to do next?
I'll be honest. I had a tragic experience. I lost my father during COVID, right?
My condolences.
And thank you. And one of the things that helped me in that loss was I need to live. I need to live. And oftentimes we know what that thing is. We're just afraid to actually do it. And so if I were to ask a client right now, if you woke up tomorrow and your life was perfect, what would your life look like? Every single client that I've ever asked that question to can answer me, right? It's sitting on the tip of their tongue. However, my follow-up question is, you know what you want your life to look like. What's stopping you from doing that? And they always say fear, always. Practical, reasons, finances, things like that. Outside of that, the number one answer is always fear. This is the question that I ask to every single client at intake in our very first session, and it's always fear. And so we know what it is that we want to do. We know what we want our lives to look like, but fear grips us. And so, yes, if you need support and you need to get to a place where you can confidently live that life and work through some things, find a therapist, find a coach to help you, right? Find a mentor if it's professionally. But at the same time, move forward with what you know to be the next best move. You can't, maybe the $1 million isn't available to you. Maybe the funding isn't available to you right then. But what can you do in the meantime? Right? And so, again, oftentimes it's not that we don't know, we're afraid. And so if you need support to work through that fear, if you need, guidance, there are coaches, there are mentors, there are therapists who are willing to support you work through that. And those fears are real. So it's not to say that those fears aren't, but working through them is so beneficial. I'm happy that I actually work through my own fears because I'm very happy right now.
No, thank you for that. And now, what advice would you give employers who are looking to kind of better support their employees during this time?
I would say be compassionate. Be compassionate, and be compassionate in a way that you remember that you're human too, right? Oftentimes organizations, again, policy versus practice, right? We can talk about policy all day, but practice oftentimes isn't taken into consideration when it comes to human interaction. And so being compassionate, being mindful that you're working with real people who have real lives, who have real concerns and traumas. And so being compassionate and mindful of what it feels like to just be human. And sometimes leaders are going through things too, and they forget that at the end of the day that, these are real individuals that they're working with. So being compassionate is very important in order to even have great employees show up every day.
Yeah, no, I agree. And you mentioned something that just kind of sparked another question for me, in that, you're working with a lot of folks this time, and it looks like they're having a lot of reflection and or a lot of revelations, right? So what is the impact that you're trying to have in this next step in your professional career?
The impact is to have my clients and their families or their sphere of influence live the best life that they desire to live. Can you imagine if we all operated within our gifts, if we all operated within the things that we desire to do, the world would be a happier place. And no, I can't, impact 10,000 people at one time, but I can impact one person at a time. I have dynamic clients who are doing amazing things and who are moving forward in the direction that they choose to move forward in. And I can see those changes within their own personal lives. So I can only imagine the impact that happens from when they operate at the highest version of themselves. And so that is what my desire is, to support individuals to be healed and to be happy. It is possible. Sometimes we do live in very traumatic, dark places. Some of us have lived experiences that are very, very tragic, and it can be very hard to see past that. But really helping individuals know that life can be lived after, tragic, and there is a way to get there. And sometimes we just need help. And so that is my goal. And thankfully, I've been successful in doing so far. So far.
No, that's awesome to hear. And again, I wish you all the best in this. Kimberly, this was a really great discussion. I think it's great to hear, you're my first therapist on the show, right? And so it's great to hear your perspective from that angle on this topic. And I'm pretty sure that I know there's a lot of people who are going to relate to the things that you mentioned. So I look forward to kind of following your journey, with Essence and everything. But before we get out of here, where can listeners follow you and support some of the work that you're doing?
Absolutely. So I am heavy on Instagram. It would be Kimberly Renee, and that's Kimberly. Renee is Renay. And then you can actually reach me directly through Essence's website, which is www.essencepwc.com.
Very nice. So good. So I'll make sure I put that in the show notes. So again, that'll do it for today. I want to thank you, Kimberly Mayes, for joining us. Make sure, like I said, put that information in the show notes. And I hope you all have a great week. We'll see you next time. So Kim, thank you again.
Thank you so much, Brian. I really enjoyed this.
The Great Resignation, people leaving their jobs in droves. There's a lot of buzz happening in the job market of late. Now, did you or someone you know leave your job during the pandemic and want to share your story? We've been having some really good conversations in this space. So if you're interested, I'd love to have you join the program. If so, here's how you can do it. First, you can email us at hello@whyiLeft.co. That's hello@whyiLeft.co. Or visit us online at whyiLeft.co. That's whyiLeft.co. Look forward to having you join the conversation. Thanks again for listening to Why I Left. Be sure to join us next time for more stories from the Great Resignation. Visit us at www.whyileft.co. That's whyileft.co. And subscribe to the show on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.